dance, which is a way that you connect your body to the earth, is how I see it. Inspiration for being thumber and being proud of my thumber culture comes from my dad. He'd put these tapes in. It would be all these MGR songs. Being thumber almost to me and being proudly thumber is equivalent to resilience and resistance. And it's kind of like full circle because my journey with Kutuhab actually started in New York. I was always finding ways to combine community service, dance, music, and medicine. That's kind of like who I am today, honestly. A thumber,
Amazing.
dancer, healthcare professional.
Sweet. Welcome to the Arrambam Show.
Hi, Hari. It's such an honor to be here, honestly.
Yeah, I'm amped to have you on the show, Maheetha, because first off, honestly, if I reflect, one of the first Tamil Kuttu dancers that I saw online, I told you this, on like the Instagrams and socials that was from America, was probably you, and probably a lot of the
Oh,
content that you're putting out. Yeah.
thank you.
Exciting to finally meet, actually talk, and actually get to know you better.
Well, it's so like refreshing, honestly, to see a podcast like arrambam that is like by thumber people and made for thumber people, made by, made for. And that's kind of one of the things that really attracted me to your podcast. I know you in New York are also sort of partnering with local dancers to do more thumber workshops, such as thumber dance workshops. And I think that's absolutely amazing. And it's kind of like full circle because my journey with Kutuhab actually started in New York. So I
Yeah, right.
like great. It's like amazing full circle.
Yeah, and hopefully we can manifest it here. When I know you are busy, and we'll get into that on all the awesome things you're doing. But if you get time, we need to bring you out to New York for one of the workshops.
I will try. I will definitely. It's on the list, the bucket list, to make a visit and do a workshop in New York. I mean, I've done a couple, but they were back in 2022, 2021. So got to be back. And truly, I think it's the past year or two have seen such a rise in Thumber content creators, Thumber representation, and
Awesome.
particularly Hollywood, English, American mainstream media. And I think that's absolutely fantastic.
I think everything is a feedback loop into each other. So I love everything that everyone's doing. But amazing. Well, again, welcome to the first season of the
Mhm.
Arm Show. This is this is exciting to connect your. Well, again, we'll get into this. You're in Seattle now. I'm from Seattle. A lot of
Of
connection points
such
that we'll discuss and talk about. But let's kick things off. I'm sure we have a fun episode ahead. But let's kick things off with, who is Maheetha from your words?
So, a couple fun facts. I always start this off with a couple fun facts about me. So,
Perfect.
Mahit is a name in the Bhagavad Gita, one of the names given for Bhuma Devi, the goddess of earth. The story actually goes that my parents wanted to name me Prithivya, but then they forgot that name. And so they went back to the Pandit or the priest and was like, "Hey, like we had this name in mind, but we like forgot it.
It's like both forgot it. They didn't
We
write it
both
down.
they both just forgot it." And my
Crazy.
parents went to the pujari and were like, "Hey, like we knew it had something to do with like earth, like goddess of earth, but we just forgot what name we like had in
Right.
mind."
Yeah.
So the priest was like, "Well, I also forgot, but why don't we try Mahita? Do you guys like that name?" And Mahita is actually not a very common name.
Good way. I think it makes you unique too.
Truly,
Yeah.
in a good way. It is not a very common name, but my parents really loved it. And they were like, "Yes, Mahita sounds great. It has a ring to it." And then after the Per Vikra ceremony, like it's a keeping a name, right? There's a ceremony for that. Like a few days after that, they remembered. It was like, "Oh my God, we wanted to name her Prithivya." And then they named our
Man,
car Prithivya.
okay.
The license plate of the car became Prithivya or Prithvi. It became
Oh,
Prithvi. So I was also born on April 21st, which is, I think, a day before Earth Day or the day of Earth Day. I am an Earth sign. I'm a Taurus. So a lot of Earth in my name and also in my personality. I'm a homebody. I am very, very chill. I would say that I'm very, very calm. I think the people who know me personally be like, "You're not really chill." Let's you can't be a doctor and be chill. This does not that's 1 plus 1 is not equaling 2 here.
Of course.
But I would say that I'm very much a homebody, and I think that's also where my love for, like, dance, which is a way that you connect your body to the earth, is how I see it. And I
Mhm.
think that's the way that I rationalize how big of a role dance has played in my life. I will talk about that later, but I was born in Detroit, and I moved to St. Louis when I was 2 years old. Um, and I grew up in St. Louis. I was always a very artsy person. Maheetha, very artsy. I played the piano, Indian classical dance, Indian classical music. Very, very artsy. I love the arts. I have a keyboard in the background here. And, I also grew up really liking the sciences. My mom is a doctor, and I used to see her wake up at 3 a.m. on random nights, getting phone calls from India about various family members having
Of course.
various medical conditions and diseases. And I was very inspired by that. And, now she's a palliative care physician, which is an even sort of next level of like, being able to allow people to die with dignity. And I see her as like my main inspiration for becoming a doctor.
That-
But I was always a sciencey girl. I was always an artsy girl, and I always wanted to find a way to combine the 2. So,
Mhm.
after graduating high school, I went to Stanford for undergrad, and I was always finding ways to combine community service, dance, music, and medicine. So, for example, some of the things that I did in college were I started this group called Music and Medicine, where we played music at hospitals. Another thing I did was create dance workshops to teach kids science at a middle school. And so I've always tried to find ways to combine music and dance. And music and dance, it will never leave me. No matter where I go, what I do, I will always find ways to make time for that. After undergrad, I studied abroad for a year and then I landed in New York. And that's actually where my journey with Kutu Hop really started as I started seeing South Asian content creators, dancers do workshops that were getting like major clout, major attention, particularly from both South Asian and non-South Asian individuals. But the one thing that I really felt was that there was literally no representation when in 2017, 2018 for Tamil and South Indian culture. And that's what kind of inspired me to start Kutuhap. South Indian and Tamil culture have always been a part of my life. My dad, and so inspiration for being a doctor comes from my mom. Inspiration for being Tamil and being proud of my Tamil culture comes from my dad.
So,
And I think that, my dad grew up in a small village 100 miles outside, 100 kilometers outside of Chennai called Balajapete. And he worked in Balai and is familiar with Hindi, but like the man he loved the most was MGR, And so when I was 2 years old, 3 years old, this is for the Gen Z people, we used to have tapes. Okay. So like, tapes,
like,
CDs,
yeah,
that's
of
all
course,
these
of course.
things. And so we would have in Prithvi, the car
Mhm.
that was named after the forgotten name. You would put these like now it's called a mixtape now, but like, he'd put these tapes in and it would be all these MGR songs. Na 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 ita, la, da, na, da, da. And my first performance at Tamarchangam was me playing on the keyboard the song "Ullatin Kadavugal Kangalada." And he is like and I get all of my Ilayaraja knowledge, my MGR knowledge and all that. And he is such a passionate Tamil person. Like, he is like, Tamil is 5,000 years old. It is older, this oldest language
That's incredible.
in the world, right? And, reading Tamil, watching Tamil movies, all of this came from my dad. And I used to be very annoyed, but now knowing what I know, I am very, very, very thankful and grateful that that was a pot. And he wasn't for 1 second, people, there was a lot of, especially when there weren't that many Tamil people or Indian people, there's a lot of like hiding your Tamilness and your Tamil culture, right? Being embarrassed of your Tamil culture. Not for a single second was my dad embarrassed of being Tamil.
Amazing.
And I think that was like amazing. I still meet people today whose parents, like either one of their parents are Tamil or both of their parents are Tamil. Like just like they don't really recognize or identify with Tamil culture because they were told to not embrace it. they were told not to like kuttu music, right? But my dad was like all around Tamil. Like we listened to like Vijay Kuttu songs, like
Course.
and Vijay Kuttu songs that
Of
like just
course.
from 2000 to 2005 that like you just listen to it over and over again. And like he was always like, always supportive and always wanted to listen to Kuttu music, Tamil music, any kind of Tamil music, right? That always came before English music and Hindi music. And so that's kind of like who I am today, honestly. A
It's
Tamil
amazing.
dancer, healthcare professional.
I mean, to that, you really embodied what it means to carry both of their, in some sense, passions, their identities forward, and you merged it into this, like, honestly amazing, like, combination of
Yeah.
an individual who's, like, proud Thamilan, right? And also a proud doctor, a proud physician, and just in some, I see it as like a proud community leader in that regard, right? Creating this and creating this, like, in some sense, I see it as acceptance. And I was telling you this before, which is it was you, and a few other creators, like Tamil creators, were unapologetically Tamil online,
Yes.
gave
Yes.
the inspiration, right? Of, okay, we can do this too. And then, like, we'll get into
Mhm.
this. It's like the evolution is great, but like it has to start somewhere, and somebody has to take that step. Amazing. Want to
Absolutely.
get to that a lot more. So the
Yeah.
question I have now is like summing that all up and talking about
Mhm.
this in piece of the puzzle, being Tamil, right?
Yes.
What does being Tamil mean to you?
Wow, that is such a loaded question.
Absolutely.
Thumber being Thumber, it's almost like and I think I said this before, like, being Thumber for me comes before being Indian. And I, have balanced, like, both because there are aspects of being Indian that don't particularly relate to necessarily being Tamil, aspects of being Tamil that don't necessarily relate to, like, all, Indian people.
Of
But
course.
I think being Tamil is also means resisting erasure in in a way, right? Yeah, resisting erasure, like
Oh, erase.
ERASE.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course. Of course. Okay. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Right? Like me being proudly Thummer, like our culture, there's so many aspects of our culture that are unique to us and that should be carried forward and that should be represented. And, you know, being Thummer almost to me and being proudly Thummer is equivalent to resilience and resistance, particularly of the culture of our forefathers. And, you know, especially of like the people in Tamil Nadu who are even less visible, right? Who are, being erased on a day-to-day basis. And I think that is really important to recognize as well. Yeah.
That's amazing. My next follow up to this was
Mhm.
how, right, has this activity evolved over time? But what I really want to dig into is what do you mean? I have a sense of what you mean, but what do you mean by when you say stumble over being vegan?
I think every Thumber person always encounters somebody who is
Mhm.
like, "Oh my god, you're Indian. Have you tasted chicken tikka masala?"
Mm.
And I have never in my life ever tasted chicken tikka masala.
Artemis.
I am vegetarian, but
Okay.
there are also these other things that are just like non, chicken tikka masala. They are barely authentic Punjabi culture, let alone they are not,
I mean,
Tamil
I think
culture.
chicken tikka masala was invented in England.
Right, exactly. And so there's this like, and then when it's just like when somebody is trying to relate to me, they relate to me as the Indian that they know, which is a lot of Hindi film culture, a lot of foods from the North Indian cultures. And that after some point, it's just like, no, like I need to come out and really say, like, actually, like, I am from Tamil Nadu and I don't really actually, my culture, what I grew up with is
Mhm.
not similar. It's similar, from a religious standpoint, maybe, but from a cultural day to day standpoint, is very, very different. We have Italy, we have dosa, we have all these things. And now there's a little bit more awareness of that. But that was like my life growing up, even to the point where, like, at the Oscars last year in 2023, people were still calling "Nattu Nattu" a Bollywood song. It is not a Bollywood song.
It's not about
It is a Telugu song. You can call it a Tollywood song, maybe. It's a Telugu film industry song.
yeah.
And so there is still this lack of awareness that India is diversity in unity and unity in diversity. And I think I'm doing a disservice to that motto of diversity in unity if I'm not standing up and saying, hey, like, I am Tamil and I'm Indian. I'm Tamil and I am, you know, I am Tamil first. And
Yes.
then I am sort of in unity with all the other Indian subcultures to create this beautiful nation, India. Right. And that's how I feel here in America, right? Because technically, like, my citizenship is with the United States, but I don't know if I would have felt maybe the same way had I grown up in Tamil Nadu or had I grown up in India. And I think that's like a conversation to have. But that's how I feel here as somebody who has always felt sort of my culture has always been overshadowed by the dominant Indian cultures here. I mean, you'll hear I've heard for the college dance teams have been here for a long time. And there was actually a rule, a few not too long ago that was like at least 70% of the music needed to be like Bollywood and from Hindi films. And,
And like, why is that a requirement?
why was that a requirement, right? And
Yeah.
so that kind of like, overshadowing of our culture made me in America be more passionate about identifying as Summer. And yes, I'm Indian. Like, there's no doubt about that, but really, really emphasizing my Tamil identity.
That that's incredible. I appreciate you verbalizing that
Yeah.
in that way because it makes a lot of sense to me, right? And I would draw parallels, a few pieces, threads to pull out. But I think the first thing is that piece of okay, if I say I'm Indian and they try to relate with me the things that aren't true to who I am,
Right.
like right? Like I get that. It's like people are like, oh, chicken tikka masala or like roti or like chana masala, right? Like just even calling
Right.
it those words, it's like one. I don't think I ever grew like I don't think my mom was like, "Well, I'm making chana masala today."
Right. Right.
I
Right.
forget exactly what it would be called, but like that wasn't the thing, right? So I actually never thought of it that way, right? It's like when I think it's like especially high school, college, even slightly post college, it was always like that's the way if, like somebody non-brown or non-South Asian would like try to connect and be like on those things. And you're right. Like it never felt true to me, but I never thought of it as that way. It's not because that, and then until like me also really embracing the Tamil identity was realizing, look, those aren't my because I grow up with them, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's like I grew up with dosa in Italy
Yeah.
and sambar and like rasam, and it's just different.
Right. And there's no it's not I don't mean this to be as like, oh, I hated,
Yeah,
being
yeah, of course.
so like that's not what I mean at all, but it's like, when I was younger, I was like, okay, I guess this is just, the fate of how people are going to relate to me who are intrigued by Indian culture in general, and that's how people are going to relate to me. That was something that I just accepted. But then, as I grew older and became more aware of my own culture, summer culture, and how it's distinct, I think it was kind of an ethical imperative to educate,
Mm,
really,
mm,
right? Like to educate and be like, no, like this is summer culture. India is a diverse nation, right? A
yes.
very, very diverse nation. Even, I mean, I say North Indian broadly, but there are so many cultures like Gujarati, Punjabi, Rajasthani, like Sindhi. Like there are many, many different subcultures within North India. Every state has its own culture. Every state has, and not a lot of people even know that, right? That every state has its own dialect and cultures, and even within every state, there's like numerous dialects, right? And also, let's be very clear that in northern Indian cultures, like Punjabi people, Gujarati people, also feel very marginalized sometimes by, Bollywood either culturally appropriating them or people, going up to like Gujarati people and being like chicken tikka masala is also not the same, right? It's not the
Of
same,
course. Of
culture
course.
that they also grew up with. Yeah, so it's important to recognize that our experiences as summer people and being sort of overshadowed by like a greater Bollywood sort of culture is not necessarily a unique experience to us. It's also being done to so many other cultures, but it is something that, it's important to stand up for, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think to that point, and that's the piece of the puzzle with like in New York, you'll see, and you've seen this online, and I know this right earlier, which is the Tamil meetups, we have the Tamil parties, Tamil dance workshops. We also have friends who run like the Telugu
Mhm.
meetups, Telugu dance workshops, and Telugu comedy shows and different things, right? Different events, which I think is amazing. And it's like we are here. We are here to do this. I think one of the interesting pieces of the puzzle that comes out is people are like, oh, why do you need to be like the question that's always asked is like, oh, why does it need to be Tamil? Why can't it just be Indian? We already have all these Indian. Why do
Yeah. Mhm.
and my response always is totally fair question, but like my point is like you go to it, it's like they say it's Indian, but it's like just let's say Hindi music or just Bollywood music, which is fine. Music, great artists, great composers, but like if you split up the billion people in India, they're not
Mhm.
they don't all speak Hindi. I actually think like less
Right.
than majority speak Hindi. But like, what about all the Tamil musics and Telugu music? Until we have fair representation in all
Right.
these
And right.
places, it makes sense to have these different places where you can express your culture in the way you
Also,
feel appropriate.
why are they so triggered? Right? Like, why are
Very
they
triggered. I'm very
like,
triggered.
why
Yeah.
are they triggered? Like, I'm sorry, I've been listening to Emmy Lutfiya for like 18 years now, like at every single Bollywood party. And then like I mean, I've come across like similar experiences where like when I request like summer music, it's automatically like shut down or like they only play like 30 seconds of it and then they want to go back to
Yeah.
other music. And it's just like representation is important. There's nothing wrong with representation. And it's sad that we have to hear like, why is our culture, important, you know? Like oftentimes people like I made a video on Instagram and on TikTok about, how it's really important to understand the importance and the gravity of why not do winning the Oscars and being nominated for the Oscars is huge. Right. And because it's like, this is South Indian representation that's important. And so many people in the comments were like, why are you being divisive? I'm like, no, I'm not being
Like,
divisive.
why are
It's
you trying to claim just because now it received an Oscar? Why are you trying to claim this here?
right.
It's the other way
Right.
to think about it too. It's like
And
there hasn't been any claims about this before. There's usually been about that.
right. And I almost feel like those are the same people who are like not will be like, oh, this is not that great of a song. Like this is not that great of a song, And
Yeah,
so it's like I'm not saying this isn't a win for India. I'm just saying that it is also a win for Southern India. It's also a win for Telugu people,
of course.
right? And as like somebody who's Tamil, I recognize the importance of recognizing our Telugu brothers and sisters as well, So
And
um
Malayalam and Kannada
and
and
my
all the different pieces of the puzzle, right?
totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
nice. Yeah, there's so much there, but this could be multiple different podcasts with
Never
multiple different people and channels, right?
I
Of course.
have the thoughts.
So many thoughts, so many thoughts. But speaking of that, right? Like, and coming back to what I think is just special about what you've been just unapologetically doing is, of course, Tamil dance and Tamil Kuttu dance specifically, and just really embracing it. What? Let's talk about that. Let's get into that. And where I want to start is, of course, just where did you start? Like, how did you get into that? I know you said your dad was unapologetic Tamil, which I just love, right?
Mhm.
But it's like, what was the push there for you? What was the origin story?
Well, I've always liked Kutu music and Kutu songs, right? And I think I want to start this off by being very, very careful because Kutu music and Kutu dance, right? there's so much variation when it comes to the moves that are used. Like Kutu originated in what we call like the dance of like the people or the usually people who are from rural areas, gramams, right? And then the art form became co-opted and represented in Tamil industry, right? And I want to recognize the privilege that I have as a very privileged person whose family had the opportunity to immigrate from India to here. It is a place of privilege to be able to be a part of this art form. And I not a day goes by where I don't think about sort of how can I get this representation for the people who really deserve this representation in southern India, right? The Gramatu Party, Olavira Party, right? Like the choreographers for these Kuttu dances, right? In these, and they are doing decently well, but you have to even recognize that even in summer films, like the art of Kuttu has been adapted, changed, commercialized. And then, there's this organization that I've been in close contact with. I'm just gonna make sure I'm pronouncing it right. It's like Kare Kutte. And it is, let me actually just bring it up. Let's see. It's like Kare Kutte. Kare Kutte. I'm not able to bring it up. I will look it
It's
up.
not. It's like a dance.
Yeah, no, it's a group that really tries to teach people the origins of and tries to basically not just teach the origins, but take part in teaching the history of Kutu, the different kinds of the
Mm.
different types of not to dance or like non-dance. And during my research here, I want to go and like just learn from them because I think it's really important to always recognize the privilege that you have and the origins of the art forms and the space that you are occupying. As a Thumber person, as someone who's proudly Thumber, born and bred Thumber, 100% Thumber, yes, I have some legitimacy in the space, but as someone who is quite frankly from a more privileged position, I think it's important to always really go back and uplift the people who really, really created this art form. And it's a similar way that I felt about Bharatanatyam too, right? Like Bharatanatyam, if you think about it, was initially created by the Devadasis, people in the sort of people who were dancers, like their cast was the dancer cast. And then it became adapted and co-opted by upper caste people, which is today like my sort of conflict, my inner conflict with, doing Bharatanatyam in and of itself. And that can be a conversation for a different time. But these things happen over and over again. We see it with hippie done with hip hop, with I mean, and then, with Kuttu, with Bharatanatyam. So I think it's really important to do that. However, that having been like a whole intro, I do say that the inspiration for Kuttu Hop truly came from the reclaiming of my Thumber identity, right? That really like sealed it because I felt very isolated in college. And even, you always encounter like Thumber people who like know more about like Bollywood songs and Bollywood music than I do about Thumber music, right? Even like some of my Thumber friends that I grew up with, like I would not be able to be like, hey, that Ilayaraja song, like "Mannil Vandu Kaadalan Yaarana," right? I would not have been like, that's a special level of like Thumberness that was like given to me by my dad, and I think I yearn for that, right? I yearn for people who are able to be like knowing what that song was, and so I was like, well, if I can't find people around me in the near space, why don't I do something to bring those people to me? And I think that's the intention behind Kutuba, was to create a community that was going to raise awareness about Tamil music, raise awareness about Kutu as a dance style, and basically create a space to just be unapologetically Thumber and to take part in Thumber culture. So that
That's
was really the inspiration.
that's amazing. That's amazing. So to that point, like, what is remarkable about what you've done is, of course, you started Kutuha because I think that's the only first true like Kutu organization
Yeah.
here in America. That's the
Mhm.
first one. There may be others. Sorry. Anyways, this again, there may be others.
Totally.
I'm
Totally. I mean, I totally agree with you. First Kutu thing in America, but our Sri Lankan brothers and sisters in Canada and our Sri Lankan
course,
brothers and sisters in England are
English,
are doing wonders.
of
On our
course,
squad, like all of that. Oh my God.
they're
Jesse said
killing
they
it,
are. Mm.
killing it. They're the trailblazers at the end of the
They are also, I was gonna say, like part of the inspiration was also seeing them too. Like
day.
they're trailblazing. Yeah.
There's that, right? And then there's, of course, you're as a part of Cut the Hopper, and I would love to hear your story around this. Is even before that, you've been a creator, right? You've been creating content, posting it on Instagram, TikTok. I think we use Instagram first, but what was that journey? Can you just like walk us through it? Of course, your dance. When did you start like, posting? What did that look like? Why did you do that? When did you start creating your choreos? How did that morph into like, your some personality online to also cut the hop?
Yeah. Wow. So I actually recently gave a talk about this at the Society for Gynecological Surgery at their annual meeting in Orlando a couple weekends ago. Because I always think about this question, like, when did my journey with content creation start? And it's some people would be like, okay, when you like really started posting on Instagram or TikTok. But like I only started using TikTok in 2022.
Okay,
I used Instagram in 2018 to just post like dance videos
right,
that I would go to dance workshops and like it was supposed to be like a dance page for me,
right,
really.
of course.
And then now it's become more of like a healthcare worker and dancer and everything in
Just
between.
you.
And just me, really, right? Unapologetically just me and whatever I am, multidimensionally. Instagram does a great job of, like, appreciating your multidimensional nature. I think TikTok does not, and I've struggled with TikTok because I feel like TikTok looks for you to really be, like, one thing, and I am a multidimensional person, and I think you can't do that until you have, like, the initial, like, following. But I would say that my journey with content creation actually started with Bharatanatyam. I
Oh,
started learning Bharatanatyam at a very young age. And when you think about what Bharatanatyam is, it is the art of storytelling. It's the art of narrative, right? And so
right.
you're doing choreographies, you're creating, you're telling stories. I'm just gonna get my plug. You're telling stories. And I was also choreographing after some time, and teaching and choreographing. And I would say that's where my journey with content creation started. That's a piece of content creation that like says something. And Bharatanatyam really allowed me to explore other art forms, particularly hip hop, which was another art of storytelling. I mean, all dance forms are arts of storytelling. But I wanted something different in college. So I joined an exhibition hip hop dance team, a few of them, and really enjoyed the process of choreography, of showing of like blocking people, putting people in places, telling a story with an entire set. It was a different kind of movement, but I think because I'd learned Bharatanatyam, I think other dance forms come easier to me than somebody who would not have had that kind of Bharatanatyam experience.
Right.
Um, and so that was also a lot more content creation. I think that's when I started posting like dance videos, and then I studied abroad and came back to New York, and that's when it really started, I think. When I came back to New York, I started doing dance workshops. I was on Project D, which was a hip hop dance team that was like just choreography dance team. I don't even know if right now we would call it hip hop. I think it should just be called a choreography team.
Okay.
And I was, on their team. I was dancing, we competed. And one of the requirements was that you had to go to a dance workshop every month, one or two dance workshops every month to like learn from other people. And I used those dance workshop opportunities to go to SA grooves, Afro Desi, explore the up and coming like Indian dance space. And so that's when I started posting dance videos. And then I really just it became like a personal plus kutu hop and dancing page where I started posting more like throughout medical school. I really posted a lot of my kutu hop content on there. I really was just posting like, pictures with friends and then kutu hop content. And then I think in the end of medical school when I really started to do TikTok and be like, "Oh, I think people would really like a dancing doctor on Instagram who also was unapologetically thumber," but that was, like, for, like, a different audience. But
Yeah,
I just thought, like, I think I wanna do that. Like, I think it'd be cool. I know I'm kinda funny. I know I have, a lot of experience in dance, and I think
of course.
people would like to see that. And so that's kind of where really I kind of really took off in terms of content creation, my 4th year of medical school before I started residency.
That makes sense. And then how did like when was like the impetus of Kutuha? When were you like, we're gonna do Kutuha and you found it? I know you're building it with other individuals, right? Like what was the journey?
It was, pretty quick, I would say, because I wanted to get started on the sooner side. My first year of medical school is always a little chill, right? So, I came to Boston in June of 2018, July of 2018. School started in August. I, looked at a few dance workshops here and there. I came across Boston Bollywood, and I came across Ashwin Kumar, who was
Okay.
on Boston Bollywood. I came across his page. He is a fantastic, phenomenal lyrical choreographer too, and he does a lot of lyrical choreography to a bunch of Thummer music. And very, very like still today thinking about his choreography and his dance ability. I'm just always in awe. But he is also very Thummer, right? And I hit him up. I was like in August or in October, November. I was like, "Hey, I'd like to do like Hutu Hop for you, and I want to model it around SA grooves and Aphrodisi. I'd really like to, they're doing a lot for like the Afro space, the Bollywood space, but I would like to do something similar for like the Kutu space." And he was like immediately on board. And I think our first 2 years were great. We did a workshop every week, every not every week. Oh my god, every month I'd make the mixes or we'd get mixes, and it was pretty good. Like, for the first year or so, we did, like, 10 to 12 workshops. It was a hit. People knew what Kutu Hop was. People were
Amazing.
following our, like, Kutu Hop. I think that's where most of the growth was, like, to, 2,000 3,000 followers. But then after that, unfortunately, he had to leave to go to New York, and so we were trying to choreograph separately. I started to teach sort of by myself, but also collab with a few other people. Like, that's when sort of Kutu Hop's, like, collaboration era started, where Kutu Hop, I
2020.
recognize. Yeah, that was like 2019, 2020 into, like, the
Oh,
pandemic, basically. And that's when I also realized the value of when you really are saying, like, we're doing fusion, it's important to remain authentic. And Kutuhab had received a lot of very constructive criticism from the hip hop dance community that I am ever so grateful for. To say that, if you're saying like kutu hop, like, you want to make sure that you are staying true to the roots of kutu, but also, like, if you're going to say you're choreographing hip hop, you want to make sure that you have a choreographer on your team, or you're choreographing with someone who is, who is trained adequately in that space.
okay.
And I
Okay.
think that that was something that we really needed to hear, and something that I took very, very seriously. And so ever since then, that's when Kutu Pop started its collaboration era, where I found Black and Brown hip hop artists in the community to collab with them
That's
and
amazing.
do workshops where we would collab. And I also noticed that the quality of the choreo increased very much when I did that. And it's always a hit. Those kinds of collabs are a hit. And I've also done a couple of collabs here as well with Black and brown artists from the hip hop and Afro dance spaces to collab and fuse those styles in an authentic way. Um, I don't think other folks have done that as much, and I hope that we as an Indian community can come to a point in the space where we do that a lot more, because I think the more the merrier. And I think it's absolutely important to expose people to different styles, different content creators, different choreographers, and really uplift the voices of people who have traditionally been marginalized and whose art and culture have been co opted into different spaces. So,
That's
yeah.
amazing. Amazing. So to that point, we'll get into this too, where it's like you move from Boston to Seattle, and you've taken Could the Hop with you
Yeah.
to Seattle, and I know you're
Always
running dining
about always
shops.
comforting.
Yeah. What does
Yes.
Could the Hop look like today? What is it for you?
So I do teach alone most of the time. And it's choreo that I feel like inspired by to teach. And it's the same kind of idea where it's either a thumber, it's always gonna be either a thumber or a Telugu song that is either on its own, mixed with another thumber or Telugu song, or mixed with like either a Hindi or an English song. And I think about I like it's really sometimes like choreography is very like spurious and spontaneous, right? Like you listen to something and you'll be listening to I listened to a piece like, oh, I guess maybe we can get to how I think of choreo and how I choreo, right? So I listened to a piece of music and I first figure out like which part of the music I like and that I think would be good from a musicality standpoint, right? Does it have versatility in beats? Do I like the lyrics? Do I like the vibe? And then I will pick maybe like a 30-second to 45-second segment because workshops here are usually an hour and 15 minutes. And so to video people, teach choreo, do warm up, it's like the choreo can't be like too long.
It's crazy because
And
our workshops here are usually like 2 hours to 2:15.
exactly, exactly. So I am used to 2-hour workshops. I think that's a great, hour and 30 minutes choreo, drill, 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 30 minutes for like stuff. But here it's usually either an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and a half. And so it's, I can't just jam too much choreo into it. And I think in Boston and in New York, I think the people who come to workshops, especially with lab workshops, are people who have already like a moderate to a lot of dance experience already. I think that Rangila is doing a fantastic job of getting people who have not really had that much dance experience or who are just really trying to explore their bodies in a safe space to get them to like come out and
That's
really have a
incredible.
good time. And I think that's really, really incredible. And so I have to also think about making my choreo a little bit more beginner friendly in Seattle. And I think there's nothing, I absolutely love teaching and having choreo that has something in it for everyone. And so I've been more cognizant of that here. And so when I listen to a piece, I take a 30 to 45-second chunk that I really like. And then I start thinking about the beats that I want to hit. So that'll maybe be like another day or two. I'll just let it marinate in my brain and in my ears. I think about all the beats that I want to hit. I will very sporadically say, like, oh my God, at this part, I want to do da da da, right? And at this part, I want to do like, and just kind of figuring out in chunks, like, what moves would be good at, like, certain points. And then once I have enough of those small little chunks, I sit I sit for, like, an hour or 2, and I, like, just try to fill in the gaps, with, like, what I hear. And that's how I create, a choreo. And that happens over, like, a week. Right? Like the picking out the chunk, putting in like the major beats that I want to get and the steps to the major beats that I want to get and that I want to show. Figuring out like the arc of like where this piece is going to go. That all takes about like 3 to 4 days. And then I just kind of take an hour or two to just like fill in the gaps and then use my chord.
That's incredible to hear, and I think it's just so interesting that it's again, like an hour and 15 minutes. It just changes the dynamic of the way you go about it, the way you deliver it,
Yeah.
what the actual workshop is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so now what I'm curious about is just think about your
Uh huh.
career quote, and
Uh
then
huh.
pop everything you're doing with the workshops. What does this look like for you? What does the future look like? Where are you going with this?
You know, I think every dancer goes through a phase of like, I want to teach, but then they should always go back to the phase of, I want to learn and I want to train
Okay.
because dancing is a lifelong journey of training and learning and teaching, right? Like
Learning new styles, exposing to new
learning exactly, right? And being a teacher, I think teaching fundamentals is very different from teaching choreography. I strictly say I am teaching choreography.
Mm,
I am teaching you how to get from one move to the next move. I'm teaching movement.
yeah,
I'm teaching movement fluidity. I'm teaching how you get from one place to another place with
right.
ease and helping your brain make that connection on its own the next time, right? That is strictly what the purpose of my workshops are.
Mhm,
But I I feel like this year I have stagnated, right? You know, yes, choreoing with other people is a a space for growth, but at some point every person who teaches dance workshops has to really reflect on how far they've come, what they're doing and what they're learning, and really critically assess, like, do I need to take a step back and actually train more, train harder, so that I can become a better dancer and also a
mhm,
better teacher?
mhm,
And I think, to be very honest, I think I have hit a point where I do want to train more and train harder.
mhm.
Not saying that, like, I'm not going to do kutu hop again at all, but I just think that it is important to take those breaks. And I see a lot of other dancers, particularly in the hip hop space here,
Right,
do that. Say, like, hey, I taught for like a year, but I think I need to take a step back and
right.
really work on fundamentals again and training and just becoming better. Because your quality and your talent will decrease if you don't continue the journey of learning. So that is what I think, and so that's why I'm focusing more on, like, casual dancing, doctor content, but Kutu Hop is definitely here to stay. So I'm definitely gonna come back, especially when I have more time maybe in my research year, but, like, taking these, couple of moments to maybe I'll do occasionally a workshop, but really just focusing on trying to take more workshops and train.
Yeah, makes sense. I think to that point, that reflects the natural trends and patterns of evolving culture.
Yeah,
Like music and like the themes evolve, right? Like there's different styles. Like Afro
right,
beats is a very new thing. So you kind
right,
of have to learn Afro beats, but you couldn't have learned it like 20 years ago. You learn it now, but then who knows what's going to be next?
right.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. Exciting, because now I want to go into the other part of what your life is and your identity is. And I looked I did a bunch of research, and I feel like through your Instagram and TikTok, right, I've seen who you are. And so I have a good sense of, like, at least I felt like I have a good sense. And you are who you are authentically on social media as we conversed earlier and then on this podcast.
Yes.
Appreciate how authentic you are, and I love that, and I hope you carry that through for the rest of life. But with me, like, you have an impressive professional background and career. I'm just excited to see what you do. So from here at this point, but you went to Stanford, then you went to Cambridge for a bit, and then you went to Harvard for medical school, and now you're at University of Washington. I know you said your mom was a doctor. I assume that, like, helped inspire you as but it's like, what has your medical journey been? How did that
Yeah.
all get started? And walk us through that.
Yeah, so in high school, I
Yeah.
really loved AP biology, right? Like,
Yeah.
I was always a biology girl. I was a genetics girl. The idea that, like, small changes in the cells and the DNA of your cells could cause life altering, you know, impacts. And
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. I was never a reader. I was never like a poet. I was never a history junk.
Yeah. Of
I was like, physics and chemistry is like, okay, I gotta, like, get through this, right? Like, I gotta
course. Of
do
course.
it. But, like,
Of course.
biology has always been so fascinating, how the human body works. And that fascination also comes from my interest in dance, right? Dance is about understanding your human body, understanding how it works, and being in awe of, like, the fact that, like, you are able to get up today, walk yourself to the counter to get a coffee, right? Like, there are, unfortunately, individuals who aren't necessarily able to do that, but their bodies also do amazing things in compensating for that, right? And that's also a very special gift in and of itself. And so the fascination with body genotype to phenotype, as I would say in medical terms, comes from both my interest in dance, but also my love for biology and genetics, and always like, and that's why they're always like intertwined in my mind. Like you can't like it's so interesting. Like the questions are like, okay, let's talk about your science life and let's talk
Yeah,
about your
yeah.
life. But they are always together. They are
Okay.
never separate. And
Yeah,
this is
yeah, yeah.
why. And so when I went to college, I really tried. I tried like logic, taking a logic class.
Okay.
And then I was just like, why are people like, I can't do this. I took finance and like econ, and it was just a bunch of people who like they were really interested in the theory of like supply and demand and stocks. And like, I was like, let's talk about why we still have poor people in
Right,
this world.
right,
Like,
right.
and so, law was not for me in the same in the way that my sister was so attracted to like
She's a
history.
lawyer.
Yeah, she's
She's a
she's in law
lawyer.
school. She is a lawyer at heart. Like, oh my God, like loves to argue, defend, give like if A then B then C, and so A is equal to D and therefore E, right? And I'm just like, I can see why you would think that, but here is why I have the opinions that I have.
That's
It is
amazing.
supported by this, but I really want to validate your
Yeah.
feelings. I want to validate your feelings and I understand. That is who I am, right? And that is also very earth sign me, right?
Yeah.
Like very, very, very like a people person. Like the empathy is like 100,000,
Yep.
And so I think that like after a point, it's just like I couldn't see myself in any if there's anything, it would be like doing entertainment and art. But in 2012, you can see how that would have gone
Yeah, of
had
course.
I told my mom and dad
Of
that
course.
they're paying $60,000 a year for me to get a degree in theater from not like UCLA or Tisch in NYU, but I mean, Stanford is great, but it's like, they
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that I had a sure set plan.
Yep.
And now I always tell people when people are like, "Oh, what would you have done had you not done medicine?" I always
Yep.
say entertainment, right? I
Yeah,
think
of
that's kind
course.
of like a no-brainer. Dancing, singing, acting,
Yeah.
theater, script, whatever. I would have done it. But I think the bigger question is like if I was 10 years younger today,
Yeah.
graduating from college,
What would you
would
do?
I have still been a doctor?
Yeah.
And
It's
I don't think the answer to that is a sure shot yes. I think the
super
answer
int
to that is maybe, right? Because now there's so many opportunities for representation and South Indian content creation, right? Throughout college, I would have got on Instagram, posted 3 reels a day.
even existed.
Right, reels a day. But today, if I was
Oh,
10
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah,
I
yeah,
done that, and I
yeah.
think I would have felt, and my parents would have also felt like there was actually a real shot at, making a space and carving a niche for yourself in
So you
entertainment.
can point to role models who are
Correct.
they did
Well,
this to do this.
exactly. Right? Like these people, this is what they did in college, right? Like this is what they did. And I am not saying that by any means that it's easy. It is not. I
It's
have many
hard.
friends in the entertainment industry who have gone full time. It is not easy. But
Yes.
there was at least some more hope today than there was in 2010 and 2012.
Of course. Of course.
Um, so, but at the time, I was like, I really can't, I was saying, like, as my parents had said, I was thinking, dance is like a hobby. Dance is it's a thing that I do for fun. It's a thing that I think is great. It's a great skill and talent to have that I should still cherish. But it's some career that has like a sure shot, job market after
Of course.
completing.
Of
Right,
course.
and at that point, it's like, I liked medicine,
Yeah.
I like medicine, I like being able to take care of patients, I love helping patients, I love the intellect behind, like, understanding what is happening with the patient, why their symptoms are the way they are, right? The problem solving I really like, being able to make somebody feel better, I like that. So, I didn't mind going into medicine, like, it wasn't something that I, like, did begrudgingly at all, even though I say now, like, yeah, I may not have done it if I was 10
Yeah,
years
yeah.
younger today, But it's
And
not
that's
something
also
that
you knowing what you've known over the last 10 years too, right? So it's
right,
like with
right, exactly. And so I had no problems in being like, all right, medicine it is. Great. And I really made that decision pretty early, like early on, I would say like by the end of first year, second year, I made that decision that I wanted to do medicine. And so I worked towards it. And both my personal statement for medical school and then for residency was how dance got me interested in medicine.
that's incredible. Well,
Yeah.
can you
And then
explain that?
dance got me interested in surgery.
Can you explain both of those there?
Yeah. So for med school, the essay is more like dance and music are, they are therapeutic in many ways. They are also fascinating insights into what the human body can do. And that's where my interest in medicine came from. It's like I am interested in understanding what the human body is capable of doing, both positively and negatively, and being able to be a conduit as a doctor to understand that and help people kind of overcome those difficulties, right? And that was sort of my personal statement for medical school. My personal statement for residency, which had to be more surgical, was the fact that I really like the choreography of surgery, right? The
Mm,
surgery is a very choreographed routine with bits and pieces of improvisation, right? There is like a beginning that, is choreographed. You get all the supplies, you
yeah,
go step by step, right? And when you are learning a routine or learning a choreography, just like in Bharatanatyam or in hip hop, you can learn
yeah,
many different choreographies to the same music, right? In the same way that you learn many different ways to do the same surgery. But then in the end, you make your own choreography, which can either be an amalgamation and a mixture of all different styles, or it is, you just decide, I actually just really like the way this person does it from top to bottom. And you create that. And then within the surgery, no surgery is ever the same. Even though you're still doing the same procedure on paper, it's never the same. There's always hoops that you have to jump through. There's always surprises. And so I like the improvisation aspect of it, that I like to be able to think on the spot and then improv, which is the same thing as like freestyling. And when you're on the robot, doing
yeah.
surgery, right? There's a choreographed way your arms are moving, a choreographed way your legs are moving. So all of that is very dancey and artsy. And that
Amazing.
was my whole personal statement. Like,
That's incredible. That's
yeah,
like wha that is just I would have never I mean, of course, I'm not like a dancer like that and clearly not a doctor, but I would have never thought of it that way. That's
yeah,
inc I really, really like that. Did it assume when people read those essays, it probably gave you a lot of positive feedback. Like, there was like, "That's so"
it
right?
was really funny. There was I did an away rotation. So when
Mm,
you're applying into urology, they want to make sure that you're not only interested in phalluses of the state that you're in, but you're also interested in genitourinary organs of people in other different, areas of the country. So you always have to do away electives or away rotations, which means that you have to go to a different hospital for a month and audition there for their program. And so the hospital that I auditioned at, there were a couple of attending professors who were like, yeah, like I'm very critical, I'm very harsh. And so I like show me your personal statement and I will give you the corrections you need. And then they called me and they were like, this is this is amazing.
it's
this
yeah.
is
So
I really don't there are like some grammatical things that like other than
yeah, yeah.
that, like it flows really well and like, you know,
It's just a unique way to look at things, look at the world.
yeah. Yeah, and I knew it was right because it just came to me. Like the personal it just wrote itself,
It's
honestly.
for
I
itself.
just I didn't really have to think about it hard. It was only like 2 or 3 drafts, and I think it speaks volumes to how much dance, played a role in my life.
Wow, that's incredible. I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah.
That was like super interesting to me.
Yeah.
So where are you at in the journey now? You're a resident at University of Washington, especially urology. Uh,
Yes.
what does that look like? I'm curious. I have a few friends who are doctors or residents at different places around the country now, but I'm always excited to hear what your thinking is and where do you want to take this to next level?
Yeah. So urology, I mean, I am obviously biased. It is the best field in the world, but I'm biased. I'm biased. Um, I think I was interested in urology for a few reasons. One is that we are surgeons. And not a lot of people know that
I didn't realize
urologists,
that.
yeah, urologists are surgeons. We do
Okay.
our residency is a surgical residency. We do surgeries every day, like every day.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's procedures that you go to the operating room, you put people under general anesthesia, you either cut them open or you put a robot in and do a surgery, or we do these things called endoscopic cases, which is basically a fancy term for saying we do surgeries by putting cameras into the bladder and then up the ureters into the kidneys to take out stones and do various plethora potpourri of procedures. And so the versatility of the field really intrigued me because it's like, oh, you do endoscopic procedures, short procedures, long procedures, big procedures, small procedures, open procedures, like robotic procedures. It's just the variety is great. You also do office procedures too. You do procedures for people who come into your clinic. So I thought that was very, very interesting. And it's such a beautiful balance of medicine and surgery. It's a beautiful balance of like doing interventions on people, but also medically managing and understanding the physiology behind their problems and being able to try to find a balance between medical and surgical management. I think I really like that. As somebody who has always been like I like to do a little bit of everything. I think urology was like the best field to be like, I like to do a little bit of everything. And so I think, urology was very I wouldn't say I fell into it like a lot of people that I actively chose to do an elective and go into
okay.
it, and I'm very, very happy with my life. I also think that urology lends itself to, um, a lot of vulnerable conversations that I really like having with patients about their incontinence, about erectile dysfunction. you know, people sometimes people get very vulnerable and embarrassed when they have issues with their genitalia. And being able to calm them, being able to normalize their issues, being able to normalize their feelings, being able to offer that kind of support, being able to tell them, like, hey, you're not alone. I think there was something very special about having those conversations. There's something special about being a urologist online, saying the word penis and saying the word vagina, saying the word bladder, like all of these things that people are so squeamish to say online. I think there's a value in being on social media, being a representative of the field who is like, hey, penile health is health, vaginal health is health, testicular health is health,
Right.
and normalizing talking about these issues because you realize that if people don't talk about it, people aren't aware of it, they're not going to come to the doctor. Right. And so I think that's sort of that was like my or initial impetus for being on social media as a urology resident. And then when I started being on social media as a urology resident, I realized some of these other things that I also talked about at the conference, the gynecologic conference that I was at 2 weeks ago, where yes, there is this role for education and raising awareness about urology in general, right? That reaching people who would otherwise not be able to access healthcare, right? A lot of people have smartphones these days. And that having Instagram and TikTok, these apps are free. And that is an opportunity, right? That's an
Yep.
opportunity to reach people that may or may not have access
Yep.
to care, right? You're also participating in harm reduction because there's a lot of misinformation on there, particularly since the COVID-19 pandemic. There's a lot of misinformation about a lot of things. And
Yeah.
it is participating and almost, I think a lot of people would say ethical imperative
Right.
to have, doctors be on their correct misinformation, reassure people, say, hey, like, this has been going around, this myth has been going around, let me myth bust you, right?
Of course.
But on top of that, there's a lot of purpose in being an underrepresented person in a field that is majority male, still
Mhm.
majority white,
Mhm.
being like an Indian woman, a woman of color in that field, I think is very valuable. And I've had numerous people, particularly Indian, also Tamil, reach out to me and be like, oh my God, like I saw you and I didn't know what urology was, but now I'm interested and you seem very happy in your field. And like, what's that about? so many people have, contacted me for research opportunities, advice on how to apply to urology, what to do, what to prioritize. And I think that's fantastic. It's a form of like equity work in a way,
Mm,
recruitment
mm,
equity work. Another aspect of equity is that, yes, I think education is one thing, but also raising awareness about disparities in health and disseminating that information to the people who might be most affected by them is another angle of equity that I think was not necessarily apparent when I initially started doing social media. And the third thing is, which I think is like the most fun aspect of it, no pun intended, is the humor and comedy of being on social media and
okay,
how that has connected me to urologists around the country, has connected me
correct.
to physicians around the country, how that is how I have helped. I feel like I'm now a part of like a larger medical community, a social media medical community. And how like I'm sure you saw this one TikTok, but there was one Instagram post, a reel that now has like 6 million views of
Yeah,
mine,
I was gonna ask
where
about
I was like, yeah, where I was like, it was a funny trend that was happening on TikTok. And I always just cross post now. I just post the same thing on TikTok and post the same thing on Instagram. And the trend was like, born to say, Dr. B who'll make you pee, you're in good hands.
that.
Forced to say, hi, I'm Dr. Baratheon, I'm with the urology team. What brings you to the emergency department? Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was so astonishing the number of people under that who said, I would rather my urologist introduce
Say the
them
previous right, yeah.
a way that you initially said that. Right. And I think there is a role for humor in just um dispelling this like wall that I feel like a lot of patients feel when they see doctors and they think of them as this like artificial, like, worker for the healthcare system. And I feel like humor helps rebuild that trust and also makes you a more genuine, relatable person. Where now patients are like, oh, I want this person to be my doctor. I don't want to
Of course.
speak to some like person behind a wall that's just going to give me the facts. I want somebody to like care about me and understand me and also be human. And I think that there is still a lot of discussions within the academic medical community about being professional and what that means, being professional on social media. But also, I think the younger generation of doctors are trying to challenge those sort of what I would consider outdated views of professionalism to be more like, yeah, we can be doctors, we can be personable, we can talk about our lives, we can also show that we are talented people outside of medicine, that we're not just these unidimensional people and that, that we are also human as well, that you are not going to talk to like this, worker for the healthcare system that has this like, wall, that you are talking to somebody that is human and that is going to make every effort to relate to you. And I think that is the bigger sort of lesson that I've learned from my journey on social media.
That's incredible. I really like that last, I would say, unique insight. But it's not unique. It's like you're saying, this generation of
Hmm.
patient doctors and healthcare professionals are having this mentality, which is that you can be authentically yourself. That's an
Yeah.
incredible, unique because I mean, it's not a unique in the sense many people in the next generation of doctors and healthcare professionals share this, but it's the fact that, hey, you can be authentically yourself. You can bring in that authenticity and it's like connecting with the patients. And the reason that people probably more chill or humorous doctor is because you're right. Like coming into the environment like healthcare, it feels like there's a shroud of mystery. Like because we just don't know what's going on. I think speaking from outside, right?
Yeah.
But no, I didn't share this, but I've also worked in healthcare. So I worked in
Mhm.
5 years Johnson and Johnson, but
Yeah.
on technology teams. I've seen it from like kind of not an inside, but it's like kind of adjacency, right?
Johnson& and Johnson, you mean pharma.
Pharma. That's right. Pharma. Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly. Right? Like pharma tech at this point, but it's like there's that level of like there's more. Yeah,
yeah, like, healthcare is a black box. Like,
yeah.
the number of people who, like, just don't know what's going on outside, like, after you get into the ED, like, it is a black box. And I think there is value in, being a little bit more genuine about, like, "Hey, this is, like, what healthcare workers do. This is what to expect if you come to the hospital." I think you're absolutely right. There is value to that.
I think so I work in education pretty
Uh-huh.
much like accelerator education in a broader sense. That it's the best way you drive outcomes with these teenagers, gifted teenagers, to help them, in our view, change the world in the way that they is to actually become friends with them.
Yeah.
And they're like at this point a decade or a decade more
Uh-huh.
younger than me, right? But it's for friends, they're like their barriers come down, their walls come down. They say, "Hey, like I'm an adult," helps them mature faster and just take on the world. And I think in that same way, building that authentic connection, patient
Yeah.
drives better outcomes.
Yeah.
And if you have better outcomes, it's the professionalism is key, but it's also like the goal at the end of the day is it's
Right.
the oath. Right? Your goal is the outcomes of the
Yeah.
patients. Awesome. I'm excited to see how you uh help that take that forward because I think a lot of your thought. I even saw this like
Yeah.
video. It looked like you did with your thing, which was the Kim Kardashian style, like inspirational video. Was that an attending or who was that? The other doctor?
So which one are you I'm gonna show you the one. Which one
Okay,
are you talking about?
let me pull it
Let
up. Let
me
me pull it up.
Are you talking about this one?
Yes, yes, that one. That one.
So that's my mom.
Oh, that's your mom. Okay, okay. See, that's amazing. That's
And she's
amazing. Yep.
internal medicine and I'm surgery, and she
Incredible.
was like, she was so happy. She saw the video and she was just like, "I've been waiting for this video. Like, what do people think?" And I'm like,
Waiting for
"Well,
the reveal.
waiting for the review." I was like, "What do people think?" And I was like, "Well,
That,
it's at 60,000 views now, so that should tell you what people
that's
think about it."
that's yeah. I may have mentioned it in caption. I didn't realize it was your mother, but that's incredible.
Like, yeah.
That's awesome. I'm excited to see however this comes out of it. I think that movement that you and other
Mhm.
doctors is the right go.
Yeah, and I think obviously with great, social capital and power comes great responsibility, not to be Spider-Man's uncle. But I think, there have been many discussions that I've had with my attendings and my institution as well as to like the boundaries that I think are good for healthcare professionals to have. And, I think that they've also been delineated in a lot of academic work and a lot of, hospital policy as well, where it's like, you know, shedding a poor light on your personal character or the character of your institution or the individuals around you, not okay. Making fun of patients, not okay. Breaking HIPAA, not okay. And so there are these very strict guidelines of things that are like illegal to do. But we have to recognize that definitions of professionalism have evolved over time. I don't know if you are familiar. This was huge in the medical community, so I wouldn't expect anyone outside of the medical community to understand or have known about this, but there was a paper in a vascular surgery journal written by men, top 3 men, that basically was talking about how it's unprofessional for women to wear swimsuits on their Instagram profiles.
He's
Right, insane, right?
yeah.
Insane that this went through reviewers
And
that
he got published?
and then it got published, and
No way.
yeah, and then this sort of started a huge, like, med bikini on Twitter, where many women, many physicians were posting pictures in their swimsuits being like, "So I can't be a doctor because I like to swim at the beach?"
What the
And
fuck?
and then that got immediately redacted. There's a lot of literature showing that, Afro African American or African women have been penalized more for wearing their hair in a more natural or braided fashion than having it like perm straight to like match the texture of their non-black colleagues. So the definitions of professionalism have changed and have evolved over time. And I think the goal of professionalism originally was to make the field of doc make the field of medicine a more noble field, right? Because, there's a lot of like insurance company, hospital, all these like capitalistic influences that make people mistrust the healthcare system, right? Like you're just trying to do this procedure because you want the money from it, And I think professionalism was important to kind of
Yeah.
help rebuild and regain that trust. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be authentic, genuine, funny, caring on a social media
Yeah.
profile, right? And I
Yeah.
think both of them
Yeah.
can coexist.
Incredible. Incredible. I'm excited to see. There's more on this. And to that point, I have a variety of like thoughts I've collected, right? Similar to
Mhm,
this from my friends who
mhm,
are residents or in
mhm.
medical school right now, or just full-fledged
Yeah,
doctors, right? And it's
yeah,
incredible to see, I think more of this and more diversity of
mhm,
healthcare professionals will, I think, push the field forward. So awesome.
absolutely.
Awesome to awesome to see that. I think next question is what you had first said when I asked you, okay, let's split it to dance and then pharmacy. And then I was like, or sorry, not pharmacy, split it to dance and your healthcare professional work, right? And then it's like, how did that start? You were like, well, it's actually combined. So
Yeah.
now the question is, how do you balance it all? What is that? I just can't imagine. Like, I feel like I don't have time in the day.
Mhm.
Your schedule is likely way more demanding and you're doing so much more. How do you
You know,
balance it all?
so here's what I think, and this has been true like throughout my medical career, is that the busier I am, the more I get done because I actually try to make time for all of these things.
Right.
You know, first, like my priority is always going to be residency, no matter what. It's residency. It is reading on cases, prepping for patients, reading about urology, pathology. That is that's my primary purpose. And so I do make time for that. It's also about like goal setting and making time. Like you never have time. You have to make time. And I think that's a very special skill where you just have to I do a lot of to-do lists and I just go to the to-do list for the day and I just make time for things that I want to do. I also think like reasonable goal setting is something that I struggle with. Like initially when I was starting Instagram, I was like starting to post regularly on Instagram. I was like, yeah, you know what? Like I'm going to post 2 reels a day. And it's like to come up with content.
And then and make it feel good,
It
right?
makes me feel good. I'm a horrible perfectionist, right? Like I'm a horrible, horrible perfectionist. To make it good, to make it impactful, that takes so much time. Particularly my educational videos, so much time. I'm such a perfectionist. I want to be careful about what I say and make sure that's accurate. So it takes so much time. So just tampering those expectations and saying like, hey, I am just gonna try my best. But one thing I'm not gonna compromise on is the quality of the content that I post. And I think sometimes, like, on TikTok, it's actually not productive. Like, on TikTok, they say, like, you have to actually just post whatever, right? Just
Just
post multiple times a day, post whatever. I
yeah.
still don't really, like, do that. So you see a lot of content from me, but, in the grand scheme of things, it's like I probably post maybe like 3 or 4 times a week, which is, I would say, not ideal for somebody who wants to actively grow their content, but I'm always proud of every piece of work that I post. And I think that's more important to me to stay honest, to stay to post with integrity to who I am. And also on top of making time and making your priorities, making to-do lists, I also think forgiveness. Forgiving yourself for not getting to things. It's okay. Like, you're not going to be able to do everything every day, but just forgiving yourself for like either taking too much time or not getting to things or spending too much time on one thing, like, it's okay. It is totally fine.
Totally. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair. R I think it's like this goes, if you wanna if you need something done, you give
Mhm.
it to the free person who's free or the busy person, and it's like,
Mhm.
give it to the busy person. The busy person will make the time to figure out how to get that thing done. The free person will just procrastinate and never get it done. There.
Yeah, I mean, that's I don't know how true that is in general, but for me, for sure, I think, like, the busier I am, the more I get done.
The For
Um,
sure. For sure.
and I think that's just the life of, a healthcare professional.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're an hour and like 25 into the podcast here. So
And this has been such a great experience, like, I didn't even see time fly.
yeah, same. I just looked down. I was, this is great.
So in the space of, like, summer dance, or let's just talk about, like, summer music in general, right?
Okay.
Like, I'm very familiar with, like, back like, Ilayaraja was, like, the king, the queen, the jack of all trades back
Right.
in the '80s, and then '90s saw, like, A.R. Rahman, and then, like, the 2000s and, 2000s to 2015 was the era of, like, the trifecta of, like, Yuvan Shankar Raja, Haris Jayaraj, and A.R. Rahman, like, Devi Prasad, like, here and there, but
He from Telugu to Tamil, then back to Telugu.
yeah, exactly. And so most of the songs that I listen to are like from, those creators. And then I think we've seen a lot more of like just like it's interesting because in Indian culture, like music that is popular has never been like the standalone album, right? Like the concept
Mm,
of like producing an album and just releasing it has not been like a super mainstream way of, like, Indian music getting out, right? Indian music is almost always attached to a film,
of
right?
course.
And so I think it has now been interesting to see people just release albums, right? Like Sid Sriram just, like, releases albums, right? And that is now as places like Spotify and SoundCloud and all these apps have tried to take the middleman out between artists and these like bigger industries and companies. And now TikTok and Instagram, these social media apps have found easier ways to connect people with artists that they're interested in. And also it's like easier to like get a following. We're starting to see more like up and coming artists. I don't know her name, but there's a mix or a rendition of the song "Una Kurane
Yeah, great.
Ura."
Great.
Yeah, exactly, Prit, exactly, right? Like, that song I've listened to on repeat, like, even more than the original Head of Jed's version. I am excited to see what she does,
Yeah.
Prit. There's a content creator, Yunshin Produce, who recently, I think, was featured on an album with the Shruti Hassan.
Yes.
That's, like, really exciting. I'm really excited, like, it's very, very rewarding to hear her like, one of my favorite songs of hers is, like, the "Tali Katika Pore, Tali Katika Pore," and then, obviously, Rowdy Baby is, like, a
Of course.
favorite of mine, but it's so like, when Cuckoo came out, like, I was like, "Oh my god, this is, like." I listened to that on repeat more so than almost any, like, movie song that she is
Right.
saying, right? So it's really nice to see artists, like, separate or be able to produce art without it being attached necessarily to, like, a movie, and so I think that's a crucial change in the way that, like, summer music has now been able to, like, infiltrate a lot in a positive way, infiltrate, like, our mainstream culture. In the dance space, I'm really excited that, like, Ghana and Kutu dance has gained popularity. So when I started Kutu Hop, Ghana Squad was the Kutu, like, dance crew. It was a group of 4 girls. I think in Toronto, I wanna say.
First Toronto, yeah.
Toronto, and then Jesse Sadayar has been such a fantastic, like, gift to the field of, like, summer culture, hip hop, Diva as well. There's a huge, like, Sri Lankan summer community. Oh, Jahi Money, there's some European folks there as well. Jahi Money, Krish Silva in London. And so a lot of folks have there's another like Kutu creator in Spain. I think her name is I know these content creators by their like Instagram handle, but her I think her full name is Vinat Dance with Vinny. Yeah.
Oh,
Sure.
yeah,
Doc
yeah, of
that
course,
should
of
come out.
course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Dance
yeah, of
Market
course.
Vinny.
I
So
also find their Instagram handles because that's what we
right?
see the most, right? Yeah,
Like Vinny, I'm like,
yeah,
yeah. Not that so and now I have Krish and Shruti Barniappan are
of
teaching
course.
Kutu workshops. Kutu has become more like a, like a Desi dance network, like DDN convention, like a Kutu or Ghana workshop has become sort of like mainstream to like have that. So it's nice to see that along with like the ability for Tamil artists to just produce music, you also have a lot more appreciation for like Kutu culture, Kutu music, and Tamil music as well. And so I'm excited to see all of these artists kind of make it, big. And I'm so glad that Sid Sriram has now, is he going to Coachella? I think he's,
I think he has a set there. Yeah,
yeah. So Sid Sriram is performing at Coachella and like, that's like amazing. Like Tamil people at Coachella, like, let's go. And so yeah, I'm just excited to see like how Tamil culture is just gonna become like a house name, like, in the near future. So,
I think it's the evolution of like Tamil beats mixed.
yeah.
Like I feel like it's the way that
Yeah.
Latin and reggaeton came in to then
Right,
Afro
right,
beats. It's like it's
right.
just a matter of time until it's like the true Tamil voice and that beats and the music
Yeah.
come into the culture.
Yeah. And also, like, shout out to, like, honestly, people like Shreemix who have been, like, really, getting people to listen to Tamil music by mixing it intelligently with more sort of, like, mainstream relatable things. I think, like, honestly, hats off to him. I think he has definitely done a huge, huge, service to Tamil culture as well.
Absolutely. Needs to be these sparks of inspiration.
It
Don't follow the rules, right? Like you said,
right.
we're in dance comps,
Yeah.
maybe like you can't have Tamil music. You have this.
Right. Right. Like, what's up? What? Yeah.
What I'm curious about it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and I want to answer your last question, like advice to like Tamil creators. I think like look at Midusha, Need to Chat, right? Like just be yourself. Be proud of who you are. Just be yourself. And the people who love you will find you. And I think that is my 100% advice to any Tamil content creator who wants to be there. You don't have to be super Tamil on, like, if that's not who you are, or that's not who you don't have to be super Tamil, but seeing that you are feeling okay and good in the skin that you have, I think means a lot to people who are watching your content.
And then embracing that like balance is key.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'll send you this if you haven't seen this yet. Right? I wrote when I think of as I call it a manifesto. It was just
Yeah.
why behind arrambam, right? And the
Yeah.
way it is Tamil sangams were created, like we grew up going to, were created by the older generation, the way we- Tamil culture, their
Yeah.
identity as Tamil, and what it meant to celebrate Tamil culture and be with
Yeah.
versus Tamil doesn't in the form and structure that it was, isn't, let's say, true to like our generation, which is grown up here being third culture kids,
Yeah.
as of Western culture. I wouldn't say just American culture. It's
Right.
really Western culture broadly and
Right.
Tamil culture. It's not Indian culture or it's not South Asian culture. It's Tamil culture.
Yes.
Mix is a unique balance, and we enjoy the
Absolutely.
culture. We find connection with community, you in unique ways.
Absolutely.
That's why Armbug exists.
Yeah.
And that's what we're hoping to do online in real life in New York, hopefully other parts of the country too. But point being to that extent, right? You what you said, Me Too chat, Madusha, she just being authentically who she is,
Just being her.
right? And which is true to us because that's who we are too, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Because
Absolutely.
you're
And
just
like
double, that's not authentic to us.
right. Exactly. right? And she does such a good job of she speaks French, she speaks English, she
Yeah.
speaks like and like she captures the essence of what it felt like to be goofy around serious summer parents. Right. And like that to me is so relatable, right? Because I'm this like goofy person. And my mom was like, don't you ever stop goofing around once just be serious for a while, like, and it's just, I like see, like, and it's so relatable to see that like other people have been having like that same experience. Um, and she's just so authentically her. I am excited to see her comedy. I'm excited to see her Netflix special. I am excited to see where that goes for her. I'm so, so excited to see her.
You're
There's
manifesting
also
it here. And
totally,
hopefully comes with reality for everybody.
yeah, Shiv, a film reviewer Shivon. I think she says Shiv, but I don't know if her name is full name is Shivani. I think it's Shivani. But yeah, Shiv is she's like South Indian. I don't know if she's Tamil or Telugu, but she just got to basically interview Dave Patel for Monkey Man after
See,
doing like
I
film reviews of
know.
like Tamil movies and Telugu movies. She was just authentically herself. The Nila extract. She is like a reviewer. She does this Summer Kardashian skit from England. Like, I'm excited to see where she goes. Like, all these people who are just being authentically Summer is so, so, so nice to see.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, I think more of that, and hopefully we can get a lot of them on this podcast, share their
Totally.
stories here. That's the goal, and that's why we
Totally.
started this. It was
Totally.
like, can we connect with more people who are helping trailblaze Tamil
Mhm.
culture and give us is in some sense like the content that's created, music, dance, the movement, gives us reasons to connect and gives us an ability to feel that connection. So appreciate that. So we'll take a look at the names I don't know, so we'll take a look at those as well. Awesome. Well, we're an hour and a half.
Mhm.
This has been incredible. I think there's more to come in the sense of I think there's so many topics we could have dug into, which
Totally.
hopefully if you're as your time permits, would love to do a follow
Totally.
up.
Part two, for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we'll have to do that. But what I want to end off with, which everybody listening who's watching other episodes knows, some rapid fire questions here. Well, the first one that I was going to start with was, what is the meaning behind your name? Which you actually kicked us off with, which that's great. But then what I was going to ask is, why is your Instagram handle? It's dancing with Euro, right? Or Uro, or how do you pronounce that? But why is that your Instagram? How did that come about?
Yeah. Dancing Eurodoc is just like I wanted my Instagram handle to be something combined with like dancing and urology. There are many very intelligent TikTok handles that you can have as a urologist. I have seen a couple,
Okay.
including things like Dick Doc TikTok, TikTok Dick
Of
Doc. I am choosing to be a little bit more sort of PG.
course.
Dancing Eurodoc is just it kind of just was I wanted something that was dancing and urology. Dancing Euro just didn't like I worry that people didn't like
Know what Euro meant, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
meant what knew what Euro would mean.
Yeah.
So that's how I landed on dancing Eurodoc and I like it. It does the trick for me. Yeah, that's all.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What I'm curious about is, what was your first ever choreography for a Tamil song that you created? Do you know the song?
Ooh. Yeah, I do. So when I was in Tamil Sangam, there is this movie, I think it's called Tirumalai, and there's a
It was
song
in the
called
movie. Do you remember?
yeah, it's Vijay and the Jyotika.
Okay.
So I like Vijay. My mom loves Jyotika. And
Okay.
so that Tamil song is called, and my mom used to always help me with choreographies, but that was the first like Kutta song that I choreographed to called Dum Sukata. I Dum Sukata.
Oh, that's what the movie is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get it
Nice.
the Yep, that was the first.
That was the first. Do you have that posted? I,
I
I
don't.
tried to scroll back, but you have a lot of posts. I couldn't
Yeah.
go back to the last post to see if you don't have it posted.
No, no.
I
It's
need to
it
make.
was when I was in like it was when I was like 7 years old, 9 years
Oh,
old. Like
remember the
little
dance?
or no, I don't really remember the dance,
Okay,
but I knew that that was the song because,
that was
like, yeah, I really liked it.
okay, sweet, sweet. Now the question is, reflecting on all these probably choreos you created or you've
Mm,
done collab, what is
yeah.
your favorite? What stands out to you?
Oh my god. Okay, so there's like many ways to answer that. Obviously, the first one, which was a mix that I made, it was White is Colaveri with T Pain's booty work.
Oh,
Was obviously like first is fresh, first is gold. Like I really like that. The most One of the most popular ones was our Rowdy Baby choreo because that's a partner choreo. And I did it again here in Rangila. And that's also a mix that I made. But that was like a very, very
mix
special
Robbie
one.
with.
With Bloodline by Ariana Grande.
Okay.
And then there's a mix that Sandy Spell made it was Nakumuka with Kika. And that was my first like concept video for Kutuha. And so
Yeah.
that's special in a way. And then I would say my favorite collab piece
Yeah.
has been with Sean Exilus. He was in Boston, and that's for Halamati Habibo. That was a very, very good choreography for that.
Did you
That
do
I did.
the just the Halamati Abibu song or was it a mix?
It was just a song.
It
Yeah.
was just okay, sweet.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. That's incredible.
Wow. That is those I think would be my highlights.
Your highlight. Okay. Well, now I'm gonna ask a very similar question, not
Mhm.
dance related, but music related, since we talked about music variety
Yeah.
of times. I enjoy music and clearly you love music and enjoy. What are
Mhm.
your favorite songs?
Oh my god, this is so hard. Like, are we saying favorite Summer song?
Yeah, we could say Thummel and then would love to go to just songs in general.
Can't do this.
Maybe we can do it like a like you broke it down by generations, right?
Yeah.
We break it down as like Ilaiyaraaja, uh,
Okay. I think
90s and then 2000s. Yeah.
yeah. In MGR era, favorite song is நான் அறிந்த உண்மை நான் செல்லுகின்ற பாதை na 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 na. That's my favorite. Okay.
That's awesome.
Then even before that, if with just like I think that's also MS Vishwanathan. There's another song.
Yeah,
That's
of
the song that I
course.
really like. So that's that era.
Okay.
And the Ilayaraja era, I really love Then Pondichi Mayila Veroda Nidila Man Pola Vandavane Yaraditaro. I like that song. I like Putti Vecha Malika Muttu Putti Vecha Vekata Vittu Pisa Pisa Yosinganade. Okay, so that's one.
That's
And then
awesome.
the third one is uh தென்மதுரை வைகைநதி தினம் பாடும் தமிழ் பாட்டு
That's a Rajini song too,
தென்மதுரை.
right?
Yeah, it's a Rajini song. So those are three songs I like from that. Then the 90s comes around, and I like the song from Jodi. காதல் கடிதம் தீட்டவே மேகம் எல்லாம் காகிதம். And actually, a couple songs are really good that Prashant did, which he's an actor in that. So there's
Yeah,
that song from Jodi. There's a song from, so everybody likes,
of course. Listen,
it's classic, but the song I like more in that movie is
I actually like that song way more.
it's
So underplayed.
so
So underplayed. It's
so
so underplayed.
underrated.
It's so
And then I remember my parents had this like CD of all the rhythm songs. So all
Mhm.
the honey,
None of you-
God, and then a lot. Oh, kikayirade.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, victim born. Okay, and then comes like the 2000s to like 2000, and oh my god, I love Sutumbiri Chudari, Sutumbiri Chuda, Chunponan, Julikatre, Ganbarta, Kadal Katre. And then from, I think it's like Monam Beside, it's Yanan, Yanan, Yanenjakul Kavitanjali, Yanan, Yanan. And then you had like the Gino Ricardo songs, like New York, so like that era was fine. I'm sure there was like a few Rajni's, like a few like Vijay songs in there as well. But
Yeah.
those are the songs I really like, really, really
Turns
remember
out. Yeah.
from
Wow.
there. And then I think the really sad part is that when you have such like, I think it became very easy for music to just like be produced and played. And so now it's just like, unfortunately, I feel like a lot of songs sound the same. But I think Anirudh has done a really, really good job, to be honest, right? So like the 2010s to 2020s, like starting from Mune, being like, "Kun Lariko, kun
Right.
Lariko, and that entire album. And then going on to a lot of the Danush films, like
It's
then the A.R. Rahman.
wow. Yeah.
There's also Vinay Tandi Baraya that happened.
Oh, of course.
Like, so all of that, I really, really like. And now it's just, a song that I'm hooked on to is from the Siddharth movie Chitta. And it's a new movie. And there's a good song in there that's, it's like, I can't like, na 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 na. என் காதல் உன்னோடு நெஞ்சை கண்ணோடு na 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 நான் இருந்து போக na 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 na. Like it's a very, very nice song. And I'm hooked onto that right now. I'm sorry, I just like went through all the
I
generations,
love it.
like
I love it.
favorite
I love
in
it.
all the generations, but like you cannot tell. I like sometimes go back and I'm like I just go back to all these songs. And, oh,
It's
like
just
great.
there's just so much power, and it's so varied in a good way of just like it feels like to that point. I was just reflecting as you were saying this. The
Yeah.
2000 songs are very much like positive love songs,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then 2010s with Anirudh, Vinay Tandi Manavaya. Yo, that is a lot of like wow,
Dip
heartbreak and depressing songs.
and boy soup songs.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it started with Why This Color Ready, kicking off the Soup Boy generation.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Um,
That's incredible.
yeah, for a lot of that, right? But I mean, a lot of good, yeah, a lot of good summer songs. I mean, in general. Um, and I have a playlist. I'll just listen. Oh my God. There was a Spotify playlist at one point. I don't know if it's still there. Summer Tatiana. Did you
Yes.
look at the playlist? I was like,
That was a hilarious
my
playlist.
God, everything from Sarkavachirik. Yeah, give it to the kids. Manmadarasa to like deep, pretty good deep, but like it's so like so good. The Summer Tatiana, like oh my God,
We need to bring I need to find it or we need to bring it back.
we need to
So
bring it back.
really the
Bring it
other
back.
yeah, that's
Summer
incredible.
Tatiana needs to bring back.
Needs to bring it back. That's awesome. Okay. And last rapid fire question.
Uh huh.
If you if you listen to Tim Ferriss, you would know this question. But the question goes, you you could put anything on a billboard on the side of a highway that a million people would see every single day. What would you put? It can be anything. Words, pictures, video, whatever you want.
Yeah, there's so many things.
Yeah.
Initially, I'm thinking healthcare.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Oh my God. Or maybe something motivational, right?
Yeah.
Like
Could be anything. Whatever you think. Your choice.
I guess I would say I guess my life motto is like live with purpose, live with authenticity. And I think that's a powerful message. I mean, there's so much I could say, like, see a urologist, get your PSA checked. Did somebody check your breast? Like, there's so many things. Colon cancer now is like on the rise, get screened at 40. Like, there's so many
Course.
things I could say, but I think, something that's an important reminder is live with authenticity, move with purpose.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love
Yeah.
that. And I think the best part of that is you are a living example. And I think I felt that before, and it validates everything you told us about, and your story validates it. So
I'm
again,
really happy,
yes,
really happy.
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining the Arlem show for our first season. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I think a part two is due at some point in time. And so, yeah,
100%. And even, like, some collabs, like, maybe bring,
yeah,
like, multiple people on, like,
cool.
multiple
Absolutely.
dancers and talking about how we choreograph and what music we listen to, what summer music we listen to.
Absolutely. Well, we'll have to do it, especially since you're in Seattle and I come back to Seattle quite a bit. We'll have to we'll make one of these either podcasts or collab things in person.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Well, thank you again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.